Hey, Jeff and Hillary, if you're within the sound of my voice, come on back. Okay. Give Hillary another minute. Any other questions or anything while we're waiting for Hillary to come back? Or thoughts or comments?
I just had one thing about when you were talking about slipping out of your role as facilitator and being part of the system. Is that so would we say that being a facilitator is also being in the system as a facilitator as a witness, a neutral witness, or no?
You know, some people would say that. There are some differences in the constellation world about this stuff. There's a strong point of view in the constellation world that I appreciate, in which there's this thing called the empty center, where it's so important to not bring judgment. You know, this is the bad person, this is the good person, you know, that sort of stuff. Like, that's so key to constellations work generally. And to not have an agenda. And I agree to that to a point. Two things. One is that we do have a contract with the client. And that makes me unneutral, right? I think in an appropriate contractual kind of way. There, on the one hand, I think there's a way in which we work with clients and we release any need for the client to ever be different than the way they are. There's a way in which we hold that, right? And if they want to be not depressed, we're going to show up as a professional who's going to help them not be depressed. Yeah. And so that places an agenda. It puts us in a spot, a responsibility upon us. Now that's a very complex thing to say. You know, every once in a while there's a moment with a client, and I know them well enough to be able to say something like, they've just said something like, I feel like this is the thing I keep coming back to and having to deal with. And I'm like, you know what? I think you're right. I think you're going to be chewing on this one till you're 80. Because it's that big and that important and that much a part of your family system. But only when they're ready to hear that kind of thing. You know, a brand new client, you're not going to say that to. But if you know, like, you know, they're from a Holocaust family, it's probably the truth that some part of that is going to be part of what they come back to, because it's part of who they are and part of their life and part of, you know, but hopefully in a really different way as the years go by. There's not some, you know, mythical state where I'm going to do a constellation and they're never going to think about this again, and it's never going to set off a twinge in their heart. You know? If their father died when they were 4, at 80, they're probably going to still be able to access grief about that. Maybe in some ways that makes some days really crappy, but neutrality, non-judgment, empty center, yes, and I'm so much into the gray areas around this work, which makes my teaching a little bit more complex, but I just think it's part of being human, and it actually makes us better constellators in the long run. The other caveat around this neutrality thing, and hi Hillary, is none of us are neutral. I mean, the whole discussion about white privilege is revealing to us is that there is no neutral stance. We're all enculturated, we're all embodied, we all bring histories, we all, all this stuff. And, original feminist theory says it's better to own these rather than claim some false neutrality, because that kind of neutrality usually represents the dominant worldview. Yeah. So it's better to kind of be really clear about, what we bring to the table and how we see things, with a willingness to kind of have that exploded on us, because that's good too, rather than say, I'm the neutral one. I generally don't like constellations facilitated from the place of, this leads to things like whatever happened was supposed to happen. It's what the field wanted. I get very nervous about that sort of stuff, because then, what are we accountable to as professionals, right? So it's very tricky business. So much better to be really aware about all these things. And I believe there's a different question here that gets raised a lot, is some people very strongly claim that you're not actually serving the client, you're serving the system.
Right.
I disagree. I actually disagree with this. I think you're serving the client through their system.
Within their system.
Like there's no way to serve them without serving the system in some way, because they are expressions of the system, right? We're all expressions of our system. So in some way it's a false dichotomy in the first place, but the client's writing the check. They have some claim on us. Yep. That I think is ethical. It's just, what I do think that sentence is trying to reveal is that not to get too myopic on the client, to keep the vision about the system. Yeah. So in that sense, I agree with it. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I want to do with our remaining time, my friends. I would like to take you through a short meditation on starting with strength. It's just kind of a stance thing, and hopefully leave you with something that you can use going forward in whatever way you choose to practice or apply this in the next week or in beyond. And then after that, I'm going to do a brief constellation for somebody in a highly annotated way, so I can begin trying to, show you the guts of this a little bit. And whoever chooses to be a client probably won't be a perfectly done piece of work, because it's meant to be more of a teaching constellation. But that's what I thought we would do for the rest of the time. Sound good? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I invite you to find a comfortable spot. Perhaps take your time, closing your eyes. Hillary, I know you've got some responsibilities on your plate, but do this as well as you're able. And this is being recorded, so you can go to this again later. And start by returning to yourself. I'm going to invite you to imagine, as you're doing that there's a client. There's someone who has asked for your help. And you're their facilitator. And as you just notice this person who's come to you for a service, return to yourself. See them over there, but be with yourself. Be focused on yourself. And as you return to yourself, in the presence of a client, just notice how that feels without judgment, without having to change it. Do you feel excited? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel self-conscious? Are you curious? Are you noticing all your own baggage, whatever it is you deal with day to day in your life? Don't try and change it, just let yourself notice how you feel. However you are feeling is just fine. None of it is an obstacle to facilitating well for this person. They are part of who you are. And they've asked you. Now, in any way that it is useful for you, that is familiar for you, begin to invoke your own ancestors. Everybody does this a little differently. Some people start with their parents and then their grandparents and go up the rows. Or they do it in a general way. Or they notice the female side, the mother side, and the father side. Or different, the Germans and the Poles and the Japanese. Just start to bring to you your ancestors and ask for their assistance in the work that you're being asked to do for someone else. Ask for their support, for their insight. As Francesca Mason-Boring puts it, ask for their supervision. And then, having done that, turn your attention to the ancestors of your client. Not the client quite yet, but to that one's ancestors. And bow to them out of respect. Thank them for the life of your client and offer to be of assistance if they would like. And ask for their help as well. And then, having received support from your ancestors and support from the client's ancestors, return to yourself one more time with these resources available to you. And perhaps even more, your teaching lineages, your spiritual lineages, the earth, the sky, creator, source, whatever metaphysics you have, just ask for these resources to support you. And as you are in this state, allow your unconscious to bring to mind a word or a phrase that seems to summarize it. It can be a touchstone or an anchor. And say that word or phrase to yourself just a few times. And this can become a word or phrase for you in the future when you need this handy. And then imagine that some time has gone by. The constellation has started and you're in the middle. Things are happening. And just say this word or phrase to yourself. As the constellation asks you to be creative and try something. And then at the end, when it's time to release the client to their family, say this word or phrase again. And then release the meditation and take your time. Come on back. And yes, if you wish to jot down the word or phrase, feel free to do that. Would anyone like to share anything about that? What they noticed or what came to them? Anything part that was tricky and any part that was particularly helpful?
The thing that I noticed when you said, how do you feel about coming back to yourself and the client over there, was I felt like, oh, they're separate from me. Like I wasn't connected to them. And then we then called in all the ancestors on our side, and on their side, I felt this spaciousness and the connection and the container of it all. But I really got a little panicked at first, like, I'm not connected to them. Which is, it's good information for me about pulling my energy in.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's a wonderful, it's kind of a paradox, isn't it? I mean, you know, I've offered up this frame of, you know, our relationship to the client and their system is temporary, has a beginning and an end, sort of. I mean, we do work with people over time and whatnot, but there's, you know, there's also the frame that we're all connected all the time, right? And they're both kind of true. One of the things I'm going to talk about more later is Bert Hellinger, very, very helpful teaching around different levels of belonging. So we have family belonging, but we also have belonging at work. We have belonging in our neighborhood, to our nation, to our soccer team, to, you know, rape victims, to, you know, different kinds of groups, right? And part of the creativity of life is that these come into some dynamic tension, you know, and that the mundane version of this is Sunday morning, you belong to a church and your kid belongs to a soccer team. Which do you go to on Sunday morning? You're going to violate the rules of belonging with one of them, but you're also going to learn and grow about who you are through working that out. Yeah. So one level of belonging is all of humanity and all of who we are. But then there are these family things and they're smaller. And so even as we're facilitating, we ourselves are traversing these different levels of belonging with our clients, which is interesting. Yeah. And it would be, it is interesting that you got such a shot of panic. Yeah. That is curious. That is interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else sharing about that meditation at all? And if you want to share your word or phrase, or if it feels private, you can also keep it inside yourself if it feels private. And Hillary.
Well, it's very loud here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just feeling like, oh, I can't do this when it was just me. But then once I had connected, especially to their ancestors, then it just got more and more expansive, and it felt better and better and better. And then the phrase was just sort of like, bless this work, bless this work, bless this work, you know. So it just got totally out of my hands, and then it felt so much better.
There's a really wonderful little dyad exercise that I also got from Bill Mantle in Connecticut, which is to start out with you and a representative for a client. Just feel how that feels. And then start bringing in cards for your resources and then cards for the client's resources. And notice how gradually over the course of adding these cards and sort of a horseshoe around yourself, you get more and more resourced. You feel stronger and stronger about the whole interaction. Yeah. Because I do think that a lot of healing work, systemically, we come in as monads, as individuals, which is an illusion. It's not real. But if we're feeling, if the meaning of it is that, then it's real, right? Which is why we have to effort so much in our relationships with clients. So thank you for naming that, Hillary. I appreciate it. And anything from you, Jeff?
I just, after we brought in the client's recent ancestor mine and teaching and whoever else, it felt like we were at the center of this huge funnel, basically, of
Ooh, I like that.
of basically all the knowledge in the universe, basically. Interestingly, the phrase that came to me, which I'm not going to repeat, I didn't like very much. It felt trite or something. But I liked the funnel shape thing. You know? It felt powerful.
You could always go in the middle of a constellation and say, the funnel shaped thing, the funnel shaped thing, funnel shaped thing. That would work. It's like those, you know, when they're trying to show gravity waves and they have a plastic sheet and they put the ball in the middle of it and it goes down. Yeah. Yeah. And then one of them is a black hole and it goes all the way through. Right.
For some reason, it had a kind of a red-orange cast. I have no idea why that would be.
Well, and having a visual is every bit as good as a set of words, by the way. It's a different kind of an anchor. As well as, having something, like, a stone or something is also good because it's tactile. So.
Yeah, I like that. Just visualizing that as a kind of a starting point.
That works just fine. You bet. In fact, in some ways, it goes a little deeper into the limbic system, visuals, than words do. So, okay. So, I would like to do a short constellation, do the best I can to do a little bit of annotating. My suggestion, if it works, and maybe it doesn't, is, Hillary, if you have an issue, then maybe we should have you be the client, because I think it's hard right now for you to be a representative. Does that seem true? There you go.
Am I hearing now? You're hearing me?
Now I'm hearing you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably true. There's some upset in the background. Yeah. Anyway, an issue, like my main issue is maybe too esoteric for a regular constellation, but I could throw it out there.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Okay. I have an esoteric one and then I have a more grounded one. The more esoteric is, I would love to see what my husband is up to right now. So he just recently died, and I wonder if we could do that. I'm always.
And if we were to find out what was up with your, by the way, I'm really sorry. Wow. How long ago?
Like 2.5 months.
Hillary. Oh my goodness. And is that his little one crying in the background? Wow. Jeff and Kimberly, up for it? Very tender space. Let me ask just one question, Hillary, and for everybody else, this is part of what I do sometimes around, sort of honing the issue. If we were to arrange to know what your husband is up to right now, what would having that do for you?
It would, I think, help shape the way I think about him, and the time and the space in the day I create to connect to him. Because I've had times where I feel like he's very present, and I have times where I assume he's just way out in the cosmos, and there's no longer a sense in even trying to reach out.
So is it about loneliness?
Well, it's about
feeling connection?
It's about missing him.
Yeah, of course it is. So I'm going to do this, but I want to let you all know that I'm really stepping into it with Hillary a little bit to make sure it's in order for us to do this. Because one of the things that I honor kind of at a really serious level with people is the dignity of the work of grieving. And that I would never want to try and get in the way of that in any way. I do feel like it's important for me to ask Hillary, just generally, how you doing? I don't mean in this moment, but kind of in your life these days.
Oh, well, I got this baby to focus on, so I gotta be at a level that, makes that possible. So I've just ended up kind of making my world pretty small so that I can make that happen, which means avoiding a lot of people. It just hasn't been a comfort, really, to interact with the people that you would think I would be turning to. I'm just not. I'm just like, it's actually easier not to wrestle with whatever careless comment they've made. So I just make it a small world and keep him active and take him places and conserve my energy for that.
And you have a sitter with him right now that your little one is can tell is not a parent.
Yeah, he wants to be sitting right here.
Of course he does.
I'd rather he'd have me just next to him doing whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do something really simple here with you guys, because again, it doesn't feel in order to do a whole lot of futzing here. Yeah. But I keep on checking in, and I don't feel a no to just see. By the way, guys, and I'll try and talk about this later, but it's something I've developed in a different way. A little bit of, is it in order for me too? And I have an internal feeling of when it isn't. And I'm doing that right now. And I'm not getting a no. However, if it works for you, Hillary,
Yeah.
I'm going to invite you to mute.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, is this your son or your daughter?
My son.
I'm going to invite your son to sit on your lap if you want him to,
Okay, sure.
as we do this.
Okay.
'Cause
Hey.
I think it would serve the constellation if he were okay.
Okay, I'll have him come up.
We don't want to have you, like the meaning of, in order for you to connect with your husband, we need to separate you from your son.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm gonna
So
have-
you can go ahead and mute, get yourself comfortable, and we'll do something really simple. Okay. So just for Jeff and Kimberly and Hillary as well, you understand what I did there a little bit is there's this thing called systemic intelligence. It's being able to sort of look at things and notice the systemics, right? So, if I'm real life example, I worked at a business where I had an assistant, and she and I were at loggerheads the whole time I worked there. So either I can just see that as my personality and her personality and the things that have happened between us, or I can look at us as a system and be curious about that. Now that's systemic intelligence. So in addition to bringing your systemic intelligence to the constellation itself, there's the representative for the mother and the father, and they have their backs to each other. I wonder what that means, yeah? Bring your systemic intelligence to the creating of the whole context for constellations. So I was hearing Hillary's son crying, and I felt it's not in order to do this separate from him. I could just like, and to achieve it by separating Hillary from her son. Yeah. Now, everything we're about to do is pretty much not his business. Right? It's not about him being in on what we're about to do, because he can't. He's pre-verbal. He's very small. Yeah. But just the meaning of, to be close to her husband, she has to be separate from her son. I didn't want to fall into that. Yeah. Right. So I just wanted to share that with you when you're thinking about the room and how you set people up, and people who are troublesome and people who are easy, and someone who's falling asleep and all this stuff, just to be able to bring your systemic thinking to the arrangement as well as to what's going on inside of it. Yeah. And that's all. It takes practice. It just takes practice. And it's mostly just noticing, okay, something isn't quite right here. Is there something? Sometimes the noticing it's not right, like the reason why it's not right has to catch up to the feeling. So give yourself the time. I'm sure everybody here was on board with me with the feeling. Like, it wasn't that hard to tell. You can just give us a nod or a thumbs up. You okay to go, Hillary? Okay. Jeff, would it be okay with you to represent? And by the way, Hillary, just unmute for 1 second. We need your husband's first name.
Dan?
Dan. Okay, you can remute. Thank you. Jeff, would it be okay for you to represent Dan?
Yeah, I guess.
What's the I guess?
Well, it's a very sensitive situation. So
this is really useful. This is part of our process. What's your fear?
I don't know. I guess that I might make it worse somehow.
Welcome to facilitating as well as representing. Yeah. This, I mean, you know, Hillary's issue is really present. It's really big. But this just, it's part of it all the time. This is not the world's most uncommon thing. So, Jeff, I'm going to ask you to do something. Just bring to your mind Dan, separate human being, Dan. Go ahead and maybe close your eyes for a second. Just ask him not ask him. Just say 2 words, with respect. I do it with respect. Is that okay?
I think I get an okay for that.
Yeah, yeah. Kimberly, would you represent Hillary, please? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to invite, if there's enough room for the 2 of you to stand up. And if you need to adjust your webcam just a little bit so we can see your faces. Thank you. That's perfect. Okay, so Jeff, you are Dan. Kimberly, you are Hillary. And just like with normal representing, take a second with yourself and then look across. Imagine, you know, you're on opposite sides of a circle and you're looking at each other. So Hillary, look at Dan, and Dan, look at Hillary. The representative Hillary, that is. So that is Jeff and Kimberly look at each other. Hillary's representative, what are you noticing, please, as you look at Dan?
A heaviness in my chest. Just a weight, a heavy weight in my whole body.
And if you open your eyes and look at Dan, what happens?
Sadness, longing, weight.
And then Dan's representative, what are you noticing, please?
I'm being pulled toward her. Not a lot of emotion. I've never really seen a problem. It's not really I don't feel really separated. I mean, it's like I can see her like normal. I mean, so I don't feel a huge separation. But I am being pulled toward her. I have to make an effort not to move.
Do you want to make an effort not to move, or would you like to take a step forward?
I would. If we were in a room, I would be moving forward.
So just symbolically, I can see you're in a room. Just like make your start place a couple steps back. We're almost starting over. And then take a step forward. Here we go. How's that for you, dance representative?
I want to continue moving forward. And I want to reach out to her.
And how is that for you, Hillary's representative?
The stepping forward alleviated some of the weightiness. Also felt this constriction in my throat. When you stepped away, there was a little bit of anxiety, and then coming closer was less weight, a little bit of peace, less anxiety.
Kimberly, is there any way to bring some light to your face?
Yeah, let me see if this light will work.
Just gotten super dark. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So Dan's representative has his hands reached out to you. Do you want to reach back or not? Or what happens?
When he reaches out, yes, I want to reach out.
Okay. Because his hands continue to be towards you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That releases some of the weight as well in my body.
I have this, my sense is that everything is really okay, and I really want to convey that to her somehow, but I understand that maybe not feeling that way for her.
So Hillary's representative, I'm going to invite you to just say something. Dan, if you could open your eyes. Say, Dan, I and your son miss you.
Dan, I and your son miss you.
How's that to say?
Feels good to say.
How's that to hear, Dan's representative?
I understand that, and I wish there was a way I could make it better. Our viewpoints are so different right now.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah. Hillary, you can just put up a hand in response to this question. Dan's your first husband. Put up a Finger Lake Joyce if it's number 1? Okay. So Dan, can you say to Hillary's Hillary's representative, say, I will always be his father and I will always be your first husband.
I will always be his father and I will always be your first husband.
Can you just say always again?
Always. I want to say, and I'll always be available. Whatever that means.
Hi.
Oh. Can you say my love is permanent? Dan.
Yeah, a little emotional thing going there. My love is permanent. Our love is permanent.
Oh. So this is just an observation. You guys keep doing what you're doing. That every once in a while, Hillary's representative closes her eyes. And from here, what it looks like is like she's seeing Dan, and then she's bringing it inside. So that she doesn't have to see him to see him. Does that feel true, Hillary's representative? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I do. I feel it washing over me, in me. Like the words, the energy of the words. It's coming inside, washing over, washing through me.
So just on behalf of Hillary, Hillary's representative, can you say, sometimes you don't feel as close as I'd like you to be?
Sometimes you feel as close or not so close as I'd like you to feel and be to me.
And then Dan's representative, can you just say yes?
Yes, I know.
And then again, our love is permanent.
Our love is permanent. And I also have a strong urge to say that I bless you wherever your life takes you.
Yeah.
I'll always be there.
And thank you for keeping that so vague. At this stage, that's important to keep that really vague. That was perfect. So these are really important lines. Dan, can you say to Hillary's representative, you will be with me one day.
You'll be with me one day.
And all the ancestors.
And all the ancestors.
Our son will someday too.
Our son will someday too.
But not now.
But not now.
I want to ask a question.
Jeff, can you like mute your computer for a moment? Yes, and same thing with Hillary's representative. This is a moment where I'd like the client to whisper in my ear. That's really hard to pull off.
I don't know how to do that.
Well, if you know how to turn off the sound on your computer when like you're listening to a video you don't want to listen to, there's usually a toggle right on your keyboard.
I gotta get out of full screen mode.
On the keyboard itself.
Got it? Okay. What's your question, Hillary? I'm sorry, I want to make sure.
Oh, I was just going to say, what's the best way to connect with you if I'm trying to, like, if he's in and out, you know, or even if he's always ever present, what's the best way to connect?
Okay. Really good question. That's a great question for me. I'm going to find a way to rephrase that a little bit and try and get to the heart of it for you. You guys can turn. Can I hear you? I want to hear Kimberly. Can Kimberly and Jeff both hear me now?
Yeah.
Kimberly, can you hear me?
Uh-oh. Can we hear her?
Yes.
Good. Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We didn't think of a strategy to tell you guys to turn sound back on. Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out a good way to, that's really in order. And I need to be with it a little bit. Before I do that, let me just check in. Hillary's representative, how are you? I just want to check if anything new is coming through.
No, I don't feel as weighty. I feel lighter.
Okay. And how is it when you look at Dan?
I feel a little, but not as heavy as before.
Okay. Do you feel connected? Do you feel love? I understand most of what you were gauging was the weightiness, but what are you feeling in the weightiness?
I feel just a lot of energy around my heart. That's where my energy feels like it's coming.
Okay. Okay. And Dan, and by the way, so again, to annotate, I'm wrestling with something right here, and I don't have it quite yet. And so I'm turning to the representatives, and I'm asking and seeing if what they say gives me what I need. So Dan, what are you noticing?
I wish I could convey that the rightness or the it's okay somehow. It's just, from my perspective, it's everything's okay. Although I also know it doesn't feel that way to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you say rightness or lightness?
Rightness.
Yeah.
We're doing it somehow. This is the right thing for us in some strange way.
So I'm just going to offer up a frame that I'm wrestling with here. And sometimes I'll do this. I'll do a little teaching in the middle of a constellation. None of us know what's on the other side of the veil. Ultimately, we're all agnostics. Having said that, the perception that Dan is closer or further away, my guess is that something more inside of Hillary. In part of her rising and falling grief states. And they're part of the pain of loss and grief. And the sentence I always come up with is, Death makes all the difference in the world, and it makes no difference, both at the same time. And sometimes when somebody has died, we feel the difference, and sometimes we feel the non-difference. So Dan, could you just say to Hillary's representative and see if this makes any sense or use? I am close to you and not close to you all the time.
I'm close to you and not close to you all the time. Can I elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
So, just like in life, we were together, but we weren't always focused on each other for every moment. I mean, we have other things in our life. So sometimes we're together, sometimes we're doing other things. It's really not different.
So here's the dilemma that I am left with. There's nothing that all three of us can do to make it any easier for Hillary. Now, so Hillary's representative, can you just say to Dan, I want you here, really here.
I want you here,
No.
really here.
Yeah. And then Dan, can you just say, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry.
How are you, Hillary's representative?
I don't know. I have a lot of constriction in my throat, like a bitter pill or something. There's just
Yeah.
a lot going on.
Right. And when did that kick up?
When it's really no different.
When what is really no different? I'm sorry.
When Dan, there's really no difference if I'm here or not here.
Yeah. There's too much okayness on the other side of the veil. It's not something we have over here. So can you say to Dan, there is a difference.
There is a difference.
But here's the key. Just say, you're dead and I'm alive.
You're dead and I'm alive.
Can you say that, or is that too hard right now?
Me?
Hillary's representative.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think we may have gotten a little frozen video. I'm not
You're
sure.
dead and I'm alive.
Okay.
Am I unmuted?
No, you're fine. I just think the video froze just a little bit. And that matters.
And that matters.
Dan, just one more time, now that Hillary has said that and it's been put on the record, can you just say again, our love is permanent?
Our love is permanent.
I am always your first husband and our son's father.
I'm always your first husband and our son's father.
And I'm going to ask you guys to step out of the roles now. I'm going to unmute you, Hillary. How are you doing? Huh.
That I mean, it was interesting the way you wanted to go back to life because I was like really getting a lot out of touching Jeff's hands on the screen. Like I really was
Good.
enjoying that, you know?
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I guess it was also interesting the way you were putting it on me rather than on him floating out of different states. It was like my grief states make me float in and out of connection. So I guess Jeff could speak to it, but I guess Dan was feeling pretty steadily available.
Yeah.
And so that's good information for me. But then by reiterating at the end, like there is a difference and you're dead and I'm alive and I'm having a very different earthly experience. That was both hard and probably appropriate, but it was, I always want to just float off with him and keep holding his hand in these things. So
Yeah.
hard, but probably good, you know?
Yeah, I mean, another, if we were to do a more advanced constellation, one of the things we'd probably have Dan's representative say is, thank you for staying for our son.
Because it sucks.
Yeah. And he might also say, and it's harder for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so many questions come up after these things, like why? And it's interesting that Jeff, was saying this is right. Of course, that's the question that goes through my mind half a dozen times a day. Why the F? Why the F?
Yeah. Well, and I thought Jeff said a really wonderful thing for all of us, which is the frame of reference for the dead and the living is so different. It almost can't be translated. So when he's using English words, because it's all we got in common here as representatives, and the word right, all the different meanings we have as living human beings about it's right, it's probably none of those meanings. It's something kind, that's sort of the peace of the dead kind of thing that we sometimes step into.
It's a larger perspective.
Yeah. And it's not about the sort of, the cliched trite things about things happen the way they were supposed to and that sort of stuff, right? So what's really important for Kimberly and Jeff and me is just to really honor with a bow of our heads that you are up to a great work right now. And we hope you have the support of all your ancestors and your family members and Dan's family. You've got double duty, which is grieving the loss of your husband and raising a new child. Either one of which is more than most of us can handle, but having to do them both at the same time. And to really honor that There's no rushing grieving. There just isn't. It takes the time it takes. And I do hope you have as much local support from friends and family as you could possibly have, which is a whole different conversation, because it's big. And I hope this group has done a little tiny, little itsy bitsy tiny bit for you today. Even as I really want to free Jeff and Kimberly from any sense of obligation here. You're here as students, as learners, and to use this constellation for the learning that you're here and paying for, as well as being supportive of each other through life's travails. And in that interest, we're at 6:36. We are over. Before we go, I just want to ask, and what's your son's name, by the way?
Oh, Kian. That's
Kian. Hey, buddy.
With a K, Kian.
Hi, Kian. Hello. You got your mommy now. Just want to go away, take a moment and just recover. You know, we've been through something big. I want to give everyone permission just to return to yourselves fully. You're students of this course. Andrea missed this evening. We don't know exactly why, but we'll rope her in at some point. Our fourth. We started out with doing a little overview of the course. I did some teaching on stance and starting things strongly. Did a little meditation on how to start in a strong place. And then we did a constellation. So as you review that for yourself, what's your takeaway for the evening? What's for you?
Well, one takeaway is that you can take time as a facilitator to really feel into things step by step, not to feel pressured or rushed, and, you know, even asking if it would be appropriate, like you were saying, you know, is something to do, and just feeling your way through it, checking with the field all the time.
Yeah. Thank you. We can end up feeling kind of pushed or forced by circumstances to produce. So thank you for noticing that. Yeah. Kimberly or Jeff, your takeaway?
It's okay to not know what's going on.
It is. It's necessary. It's a blessing. By the way, a blessing that is often hard. Many of us learned in childhood safety patterning that not knowing was very dangerous or not a good thing to experience. So to do facilitating for those of us who have that message in childhood, to unlearn that one or to work through that one is a big deal.
I think for me was being in the field and watching you be in the field, and how to be in the not knowing moment, and navigating that, and not having an agenda. Knowing all of that and watching and being part of the constellation was a very different experience.
Yeah. And part of what I was wrestling with in that constellation was wanting to give Hillary what she wanted and needed, and wanting to find a way to give it to her that might not look like the package she had asked for it in, and trying to find the win-win, trying to find my way to the yes. That may look a little bit different. And that takes a little willing to wrestle with yourself as facilitator for a while to find your way to that place. So that's my takeaway, is remembering how to find the way to to the truthful yes for the client that may not look exactly like how the request was phrased, but is a yes to the deeper need or desire. And that feels like a yes to a client rather than a no. So to be able to wrestle with that a little bit. So in that context, Hillary, thank you for bringing this. Very beautiful, and for you, painful, and even for Kimberly and Jeff, challenging sort of thing. For us to sort of see what does this work like when, on the up, I said, you need to have an issue with some weight. It's kind of like as weighty as it gets, right? So thank you for that. And we wish you blessing this evening, and Jeff and Kimberly as well. We will regather next Monday at 4 p.m. Same link. Okay?
I just want to make a quick comment. As you so often point out in Constellations, the dead have a lot easier. A lot easier.
What is a lot oh, the dead have it easier. Yes, they do. Yeah, they do.
Plus, we're not dead.
Yeah. Okay, my friends. Blessings.
Thank
See
you.
you in a week.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.